Dear students, welcome to all of you. Welcome to this English literature class, and today we will discuss the last part of the very interesting adventurous story We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together, written by Jordan Cook and Alan East. So we discussed that by the morning of January 6, the wind eased. The narrator was back in the chart room and read on the sextant all those calculations that he did with the help of that instrument on wind speeds, then change of course, drift and current in an effort to calculate their position. They were somewhere in 150,000 kilometers of ocean, searching for a 65 kilometer wide island. Let us continue from page number 17. The best I could determine was that we were somewhere in 150,000 kilometers of ocean looking for a 65 kilometer wide island. While I was thinking, Sue moved painfully, joined me. The left side of her head was now very swollen, and her blackened eyes narrowed to slits. Okay, now she gave me a card she had made. This is remarkable. Okay, let us see. Now Sue's head injury worsened with her blackened eyes narrowed to slits, and later on you will come to know that 6 subsequent operations were required to remove that blood clot which was there between her skin and skull. Okay, so she was undergoing tremendous pain at that point of time, but still she made a card. Why? Let us see. Now on the front she had drawn caricatures of Mary and me with the words, "Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh?" I laughed a lot as well. Inside was a message, and this message is so significant. "How I love you both." So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. Somehow we had to make it. Look at the optimism of this child. She was so brilliant and she withstood such pain. And what for did she make the card? The card came as a comic relief, you can say. She had drawn caricatures of Mary and narrator with the words, "Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh?" Okay, the underlying message of love and positive hope overwhelmed the narrator. He was touched with the thoughtfulness of a 7-year-old girl. She wanted to relieve her parents of the anxiety and stress that they were going through, because they were under tremendous pressure whether they will be able to reach the island before Wave Walker broke down. So it came as a comic relief, you can say, and the card showed her Suzanne's optimistic fervor. The card also expressed her gratitude and love for her parents. Okay, that's why she wrote these words. This card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. Now the narrator says, "I checked and rechecked my calculations. We had lost our main compass." I'll show you the picture of a compass. It's an instrument. "And I was using a spear which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. I made an allowance for this and another estimate of the influence of the westerly currents." This part is important. Westerly currents which flow through this part of the Indian Ocean. The narrator had 2 magnetic compasses. This is the picture of a magnetic compass which you must have seen in your physics lab, and one of the compasses was lost and the other gave a faulty reading. But in spite of that, the author did not lose hope. He used his intelligence to estimate the influence of the westerly currents. In the picture you can see the ocean currents in the Indian Ocean during winter. So he estimated the influence of westerly currents which flowed through that part of the ocean. He also asked Larry Vigil, one of the crew members, to steer a course of 185 degree and remained optimistic about reaching the island at about 5 p.m. Understood? So this is where the narrator played a very important role, and he did all the calculations very carefully, and did not make a mistake which would have affected their success otherwise. About 2 p.m., I went on deck and asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. Please remember these pieces of information for examination purpose, because you may have MCQ questions, and these data are very important. If we were lucky, I told him with a conviction, I did not feel we could expect to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then with a heavy heart, I went below, climbed on my bunk, and amazingly dozed off. When I woke, it was 6 p.m. and growing dark. I knew we must have missed the island. So he dozed off, and when he woke up, he thought that he had crossed the island. And with the sail we had left, we couldn't hope to beat back into the westerly winds, and there was no hope at all. That's what he thought. But was it really? Let us see. At that moment, a tousled head appeared by my bunk. Can I have a hug? Who is the speaker? Jonathan, his son. Sue was right behind him. Why am I getting a hug now? I asked. Now, when he felt dejected, he went down to his bunk, and before he knew, he fell asleep. He woke up at 6 p.m. and it was growing dark. Just then, the two children came up to him, and John told him that he was the best father and the best captain, and he wanted a hug as well. Okay, so he was surprised. Why was he asking for a hug at that point of time? Then what happened? Now dear, tousled head means untidy hair. Tousled is untidy hair, right? So why am I getting a hug now? I asked. Because you are the best daddy in the world and the best captain, my son replied. Not today, John. I'm afraid. Why, you must be, said Sue in a matter-of-fact voice. You found the island. What? I shouted. It's out there in front of us, they chorused, as big as a battleship. Right? So their joy knew no bounds when they found the island, and both the children, they expressed their gratitude and said that you are the best daddy in the world and the best captain. The author rushed out to the deck immediately and stared with relief at Isle Amsterdam. I rushed on deck and gazed with relief at the stark outline of Isle Amsterdam. It was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation. So this is another information that we have got earlier. We came to know that it was a scientific base, and the most beautiful island in the world. Absolutely true. At that point of time, that was the most beautiful island for them. So from the deck, the outline of Isle Amsterdam could be seen clearly, and it was a piece of volcanic rock that you came to know, and it had little vegetation and the most beautiful island in the world. This is Isle Amsterdam, and you have already seen in the previous class as well, which was a French scientific base, and it had little vegetation. It is very small. Now let us come to page number 18. We anchored offshore for the night, and the next morning all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped us ashore. With land under my feet again, my thoughts were full of Larry and Herbie, cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress, and Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours. Most of all, I thought of a 7-year-old girl who did not want to worry about a head injury, which subsequently took 7 minor operations to remove a recurring blood clot between the skin and the skull, and of a 6-year-old boy who was not afraid to die. So with this we come to the end of This is the picture of an anchor the writer says they anchored offshore for that night. So the next morning, all 28 inhabitants of the island helped them to come to the island. And when at the island, he admired Larry and Herb's happy and positive attitude. They also played a very significant role in the whole journey. Mary for being at the wheel for all the crucial hours, but most of all, Sue, who did not want to worry about a head injury, and John, who was not afraid to die. Now, it was sheer optimism of the narrator and the two men in the crew, Larry and Herb, that helped them to carry in the face of life-threatening dangers. They celebrated Christmas despite the gales. When the storm struck and the narrator was flung overboard, he did not give up hope, but got back to ship with his ribs cracked and his mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. He also took the wheel and fought water that was getting into the ship. This shows they were not willing to give in to danger, but were ready to battle it. They faced the extremely cold night, struggling to pump out water, to find direction, and also work the radio, if you remember. So, with no response to their desperate SOS or Mayday calls for help, because they were in a very distant corner of the world, they were still optimistic about finding Isle Amsterdam and steered the ship towards that direction. Their optimism paid off, and they came out of a stressful situation, right? So this is what that we come to learn from this chapter. And with these words, let us wind up, and hope you will read the chapter thoroughly and will be able to answer the questions that will come in the examination. Thank you so much, dear. Thank you.